The radio crackled with desperation. "Viper Base, this is Alpha Team. We're pinned down, heavy casualties, need immediate extraction." What the trapped Navy SEALs didn't know was that their salvation was already watching through a scope 2 miles away, where Staff Sergeant Elena "Ghost" Rodriguez had been lying motionless in the Afghan mountains for 18 hours. In the next 4 minutes, she would turn an impossible rescue into the most legendary long-range engagement in modern warfare history. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning had started like any other in the Hindu Kush Mountains. Alpha Team, led by Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison, was conducting a high-priority reconnaissance mission near the Pakistan border. Their objective was simple: gather intelligence on a suspected Taliban weapons cache and extract without engagement. But intelligence reports, as Morrison had learned in his 12 years of service, were often as reliable as weather forecasts in a war zone. What they found wasn't just a weapons cache. It was a fully operational enemy command center with over 200 heavily armed fighters. Rodriguez had been inserted via helicopter 48 hours earlier, positioned on a rocky outcropping that provided overwatch for the entire valley. Her mission was different: long-range reconnaissance and sniper support if needed. As one of only 17 female Marine Corps snipers, she had earned her call sign Ghost not just for her ability to remain undetected, but for the way her targets seemed to simply vanish. Her rifle, a custom Barrett M82A1.50 caliber, had accounted for 43 confirmed kills across 3 deployments. Today, it would be tested like never before. The terrain between Rodriguez and the enemy position was a sniper's nightmare. The shot would have to travel across 2 valleys, over a ridgeline, accounting for wind shear, temperature variations, and the curvature of the earth itself. At 3,520 yards, it would be beyond the effective range of her weapon system. Military doctrine considered anything beyond 2,500 yards to be in the realm of luck rather than skill. But Elena Rodriguez had never been one to follow conventional wisdom. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you're enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. As she watched through her scope, Alpha Team moved into what they thought was an abandoned compound. Morrison's team of 8 operators moved with practiced precision, each man covering specific sectors as they advanced. Rodriguez could see what they couldn't: the barely visible gun emplacements, the concealed fighting positions, the way certain shadows seemed just a little too dark. Her heart rate remained steady at 60 beats per minute, the result of years of training and meditation techniques she'd learned from a Tibetan monk during leave in Nepal. The first shots came at 08:47 hours local time. Morrison's point man, Petty Officer Marcus Thompson, went down immediately, struck by sniper fire from an elevated position. Within seconds, the entire team was under assault from multiple directions. Machine gun fire erupted from concealed bunkers, while rifle fire poured down from elevated positions carved into the rocky hillsides. The SEALs, among the most elite warriors in the world, found themselves trapped in a killing field that had been months in the making. Rodriguez watched through her scope as Alpha Team sought cover behind a low stone wall, the only substantial protection in the compound. She could see muzzle flashes from at least 12 different positions, all concentrating fire on the trapped Americans. Her radio crackled with Morrison's voice. "Ghost, this is Alpha Actual. We're in serious trouble down here. Multiple KIA, running low on ammunition. Can you provide any support?" The question hung in the air like smoke from burning buildings. She adjusted her scope for the extreme range, factoring in the 15-knot crosswind, the temperature differential between her position and the target area, even the rotation of the Earth itself. At 3,520 yards, it would be beyond the effective range of her weapons system. Military doctrine considered anything beyond 2,500 yards to be in the realm of luck rather than skill. But Elena Rodriguez had never been one to follow conventional wisdom. The enemy had chosen their position well. The compound sat in a natural bowl, surrounded by elevated positions that created interlocking fields of fire. Any helicopter attempting an extraction would be torn apart before it could touch down. The nearest friendly forces were over an hour away, and Morrison's team wouldn't last another 15 minutes under the concentrated fire they were receiving. It was a textbook example of a perfectly executed ambush designed to eliminate an entire American Special Operations team. Rodriguez began her pre-shot routine, a ritual she had performed hundreds of times in training and dozens of times in combat. She checked her rifle zero, verified her ammunition, match-grade .50 caliber rounds that she had hand-loaded herself from maximum accuracy. Each bullet weighed 750 grains and would leave her barrel at 2,820 feet per second. By the time it reached its target, it would still be traveling fast enough to penetrate engine blocks. The environmental conditions were challenging, but not impossible. The morning sun was at her back, eliminating scope glare. The wind was steady rather than gusting, making calculations more predictable. Temperature was 62 degrees Fahrenheit at her position, but she estimated it was at least 10 degrees warmer in the valley below, which would affect bullet trajectory. Humidity was low, reducing air density. Every factor had to be considered and calculated.
2 miles. In sniper terms, it might as well have been 200 miles. Elena Rodriguez stared through her scope at a distance that pushed the very limits of physics and human capability. The longest confirmed sniper kill in military history was 3,540 yards, achieved by a British sniper in Afghanistan using a .338 Lapua Magnum. Rodriguez was looking at a shot that would exceed that record while under combat conditions, with American lives hanging in the balance. She keyed her radio to Morrison's frequency. Alpha Actual, this is Ghost. I have eyes on your position. Multiple hostiles in elevated positions. Estimate 200+ enemy fighters. I can see at least 15 heavy weapons emplacements. Her voice was calm, professional, betraying none of the calculations racing through her mind. I'm going to try something. Keep your heads down and be ready to move when I tell you. Morrison's response crackled with static and gunfire. Ghost, you're over 2 miles out. That's beyond anything we've ever... His transmission was cut short by an explosion that sent debris flying over their position. When he came back on the radio, his voice was tight with pain. We've got 2 more down. Rodriguez, I don't care if you're shooting prayers at this point. We need something. The enemy fighters were disciplined and well-trained, maintaining their fire discipline while maneuvering to better positions. These weren't untrained insurgents. They were professional soldiers, possibly foreign fighters or special forces advisors who had been planning this ambush for weeks or months. Through her scope, Rodriguez studied the enemy positions with the analytical mind of a master sniper. The heavy machine gun that was keeping Morrison's team pinned down was positioned in a reinforced bunker, its crew protected by sandbags and concrete barriers. The gunner was good. He fired in controlled bursts, conserving ammunition while maintaining constant pressure on the SEAL's position. Taking him out would provide immediate relief, but the shot would have to be perfect. She identified her first target, the heavy machine gun position that was keeping Morrison's team pinned down. The gunner was partially concealed behind sandbags, but Rodriguez could see enough of his torso to make a clean shot. At this distance, even a hit to the shoulder or arm would likely prove fatal due to the massive energy transfer of the .50 caliber round. She made micro adjustments to her scope, moving the crosshairs up and to the right to compensate for bullet drop and wind drift. The shot required not just technical precision, but an almost mystical understanding of ballistics. The bullet would travel for nearly 6 seconds, during which time the Earth's rotation would cause the target to move slightly. Temperature variations along the bullet's path would cause the air density to fluctuate, affecting trajectory. Even the shooter's heartbeat could throw off the shot if not timed correctly. Rodriguez had trained for scenarios like this, but theory and practice were vastly different things. Rodriguez calculated the ballistic solution in her head, a complex equation involving velocity, gravity, air resistance, wind speed and direction, temperature, humidity, and even barometric pressure. The bullet would drop nearly 40 feet over the course of its flight, requiring her to aim at what appeared to be empty sky above her target. The crosswind would drift the bullet 18 inches to the left, meaning she had to aim at air 2 feet to the right of where she wanted to hit. As she settled into her final shooting position, Rodriguez thought about the 8 men depending on her. She had never met Morrison or his team, but they were Americans, warriors, brothers and sisters in arms. The bond between military personnel transcended branches of service, ranks, or backgrounds. When Americans were in trouble overseas, you moved heaven and earth to bring them home. If that meant attempting the impossible, then you attempted the impossible. Her finger found the trigger, applying just enough pressure to take up the slack without firing. Through her scope, she could see the machine gunner adjusting his aim, preparing to deliver what would likely be the killing blow to Alpha Team's position. Time seemed to slow down as Rodriguez made her final calculations, said a brief prayer to whatever gods watched over snipers and fools, and began her trigger squeeze. The rifle's safety had been off since the moment she acquired her target. Her breathing was controlled and steady, each exhale taking her deeper into the focused calm that was essential for precision shooting. The world outside her scope ceased to exist. There was only the target, the crosshairs, and the gradually increasing pressure of her finger against the trigger. This was the moment when training, instinct, and pure will converged into a single point of lethal intention.
Elena Rodriguez's world narrowed to the reticle in her scope, the rhythm of her heartbeat, and the gentle pressure of her finger against the trigger. The .50 caliber Barrett M82A1 was not designed for precision shooting at extreme ranges. It was designed to destroy vehicles and equipment. But in the hands of a master sniper, it became something approaching divine intervention. The trigger broke cleanly at exactly 4.5 pounds of pressure. The massive rifle bucked against Rodriguez's shoulder with a recoil that would have knocked a smaller person backward. The muzzle blast created a dust cloud that momentarily obscured her vision, while the sonic boom echoed across the mountainside like thunder. For 5.7 seconds, time stood still as 750 grains of copper-jacketed death arced across 2 miles of hostile territory. Through her scope, Rodriguez watched the enemy machine gunner continue firing, oblivious to the bullet racing toward him at nearly 3 times the speed of sound. She had compensated for a 12-foot bullet drop and 18 inches of wind drift, calculations that required her to aim at empty air 20 feet above and 2 feet to the left of her actual target. At maximum range, the bullet would hit with the force of a small artillery shell. The impact was devastating. The .50 caliber round struck the machine gunner's center mass, the hydrostatic shock instantly shutting down his central nervous system. The heavy machine gun fell silent immediately, its deadly chatter replaced by confused shouts from the surrounding enemy positions. Through her radio, Rodriguez heard Morrison's voice, tight with amazement. "Ghost, confirm you just took out the machine gun position at grid 27 Alpha?" "Confirmed, Alpha Actual. That's 1 down, 14 to go. Moving to next target." Her voice betrayed no emotion, but inside she felt a surge of fierce satisfaction. The shot had worked exactly as calculated, proving that physics and skill could overcome seemingly impossible odds. The enemy fighters were now aware that they were under fire from a long-range sniper, but they had no idea where the shots were coming from. Rodriguez's position was concealed among rocks and scrub vegetation, her ghillie suit blending perfectly with the natural terrain. The sound of her rifle would reach them several seconds after the bullet impact, making it nearly impossible to determine the shooter's location based on sound alone. Her second target was the crew-served weapon that had been pouring automatic fire into Morrison's position from an elevated bunker. The assistant gunner was feeding ammunition belts, while the primary gunner maintained suppressive fire. Rodriguez could see both men clearly through her scope, but at this range, she would only get 1 shot before they took cover. She chose the primary gunner, knowing that eliminating him would create the maximum disruption. This shot was even more challenging than the first. The target was partially concealed behind concrete barriers, presenting only a small portion of his torso as a viable target. The angle was different as well, requiring her to adjust her holdover point to account for the changed trajectory. She made minute adjustments to her scope, breathing slowly and steadily as she prepared for the second miracle shot of the day. The bullet flight time would be nearly identical, but wind conditions had shifted slightly as the morning progressed. Rodriguez felt the breeze on her cheek and adjusted accordingly, moving her point of aim another 6 inches to the right. At this distance, even a slight miscalculation would result in a complete miss, and she might not get another clear shot at this particular target. Morrison's voice came over the radio again. "Ghost, we've got movement on the north side. Looks like they're trying to flank our position. Unknown number of hostiles moving through the rocks." Rodriguez shifted her scope and immediately spotted the flanking maneuver, a squad of enemy fighters moving through a narrow ravine that would allow them to attack Morrison's team from behind. Once they gained that position, the SEALs would be caught in crossfire with no possibility of escape. She had to make a choice: continue with her systematic elimination of the crew-served weapons, or shift to the immediate threat of the flanking maneuver. Military doctrine suggested prioritizing the immediate tactical threat, but Rodriguez's instincts told her that eliminating the heavy weapons would provide longer-term relief for Morrison's team. Sometimes, the best tactical decision wasn't the obvious one. Rodriguez made her choice and focused back on the machine gun position. The gunner was still firing in controlled bursts, maintaining pressure on the SEAL's position while his assistant prepared fresh ammunition. Through her scope, she could see the concentration on his face, the professional focus of a competent soldier doing his job. In another context, she might have respected his dedication. Today, he was simply target number 2. The mathematics of the second shot were similar to the first, but Rodriguez fine-tuned her calculations based on the results of her initial engagement. The first shot had impacted exactly where she had aimed, confirming that her environmental calculations were accurate. Wind speed and direction remained constant, temperature was rising slowly as the sun climbed higher, and her rifle's zero had not shifted from the recoil of the first shot. The second .50 caliber round found its mark with the same devastating precision as the first. The enemy gunner's head simply disappeared in a pink mist, while the massive bullet continued its path of destruction, smashing through the concrete barrier behind him and detonating a stack of ammunition crates in a spectacular explosion. The secondary blast took out 2 more fighters who had been sheltering nearby, while the shockwave knocked several others off their feet. "Holy shit, Ghost," Morrison's voice crackled over the radio, professional composure momentarily forgotten. "You just took out an entire fighting position with 1 shot." The explosion had created a temporary lull in enemy fire as fighters sought better cover, giving the pinned SEALs their first breathing space since the ambush began. Rodriguez was already acquiring her 3rd target, but the enemy fighters were adapting faster than she had hoped. Word was spreading through their ranks about the long-range sniper, and fighters were abandoning exposed positions for deeper cover. They could see them gesturing toward the mountainside, trying to locate the position based on the direction of bullet impacts. Several fighters with scoped rifles were scanning the ridgelines, searching for the American sniper who was systematically dismantling their carefully planned ambush. The secondary explosion from the ammunition cache had done more than just eliminate enemy fighters. It had created a psychological impact that was rippling through the entire enemy force. Rodriguez could see fighters looking nervously at their own ammunition supplies, suddenly aware that their stored ordnance could become weapons against them. Fear was a powerful force multiplier, and she intended to exploit it to its fullest. The flanking maneuver Morrison had reported was still in progress, with enemy fighters now less than 200 yards from the SEAL's position. Rodriguez made a tactical decision that went against conventional sniper doctrine. She would engage multiple targets in rapid succession, prioritizing speed over precision. At this range, even body shots would likely be proved fatal, and the psychological impact of rapid, accurate fire might disrupt the entire formation. Her 3rd shot targeted the lead fighter in the flanking maneuver. The man was moving between rocks in a tactical crouch, assault rifle at ready.
when Rodriguez's bullet caught him center mass. The impact lifted him off his feet and sent him tumbling down the rocky slope, his weapon clattering away uselessly. The fighters behind him immediately dove for cover, their advance stopped cold by the sudden appearance of precision death from an impossible distance. Rodriguez chambered another round and shifted to a new target before the sound of her third shot had even reached the valley below. A rocket-propelled grenade team was setting up on an elevated position, preparing to fire on Morrison's location. The RPG would penetrate their stone wall cover and eliminate the entire team in a single shot. Rodriguez put her crosshairs on the man holding the warhead, knowing that a hit on the explosive itself might create an even more spectacular result. The fourth shot detonated the RPG warhead on impact, creating a massive explosion that collapsed part of the rocky outcropping and eliminated not just the RPG team, but several nearby fighters as well. The blast was so intense that Rodriguez could feel the shockwave even at her distance, and a mushroom cloud of dust and debris rose from the impact point like a miniature nuclear explosion. By now, the enemy force was in complete disarray. What had begun as a coordinated ambush by a disciplined fighting force was rapidly deteriorating into chaos as an invisible sniper picked off key personnel with supernatural accuracy. Fighters were abandoning their positions, seeking cover deeper in the cave systems that honeycombed the mountainside. The carefully orchestrated crossfire that had trapped Morrison's team was falling apart under the pressure of precision fire from an impossible distance. "Ghost, this is Alpha Actual." Morrison's voice was steady now, professional competence restored. "Whatever you're doing up there, keep doing it. We've got wounded who need immediate medical attention, but the LZ is still too hot for extraction. Can you keep the pressure on these guys?" Rodriguez smiled grimly as she chambered her fifth round. "Alpha Actual, this is just getting started."
Elena Rodriguez's fifth shot shattered more than just her target. It shattered the enemy's will to fight from exposed positions. The bullet struck the distant machine gunner with such force that it literally tore him in half, the massive .50 caliber round continuing through his body and destroying the weapon itself in a shower of twisted metal and sparks. The psychological effect on the surrounding fighters was immediate and devastating. Through her scope, Rodriguez could see enemy fighters abandoning their positions en masse, streaming toward the cave entrances that riddled the mountainside. What had been a coordinated military operation was rapidly becoming a rout. The surviving fighters were experienced enough to recognize that they were facing something beyond conventional warfare. A sniper operating at ranges that shouldn't have been possible, with accuracy that defied explanation. "Ghost, enemy forces are pulling back to secondary positions," Morrison reported over the radio. "You've broken their first line completely. We've got visual on at least 50 fighters moving into the cave system on the north face." His voice carried a note of professional appreciation for what Rodriguez had accomplished. "But we're still pinned down by sporadic fire from elevated positions, and my wounded need immediate medical attention." Rodriguez understood the tactical situation perfectly. She had disrupted the enemy's planned ambush, but they were adapting by falling back to prepared positions in the caves. From there, they could continue to harass Morrison's team while remaining relatively safe from her long-range fire. The SEALs needed to move to a better position for extraction, but any movement in the open would expose them to the remaining enemy positions. Her sixth shot targeted a sniper who had been taking carefully aimed shots at Morrison's position from a concealed hide nearly 3,000 yards away. Rodriguez had spotted the muzzle flash from his rifle and calculated his position based on the angle of incoming fire. Counter-snapper work was among the most challenging aspects of precision shooting, requiring her to outthink and outshoot an adversary who possessed similar skills and training. The enemy sniper never saw it coming. Rodriguez's bullet struck his position with such force that it actually collapsed part of the rocky overhang he had been using for concealment. Through her scope, she could see his rifle tumbling down the mountainside, while a growing stain on the rocks indicated that the threat had been permanently eliminated. One professional warrior had beaten another through superior positioning, better equipment, and flawless execution.
Morrison keyed his radio again. "Ghost, we're going to attempt movement to the secondary LZ. Can you provide overwatch during our movement?" The secondary landing zone was 600 yards from their current position, across terrain that would expose them to fire from multiple directions. It would require Rodriguez to shift her focus from systematic target elimination to close support of a moving friendly force. "Affirmative, Alpha Actual. I have overwatch. You'll have covering fire for the entire movement. Call out any threats you identify, and I'll prioritize accordingly." She chambered her 7th round, knowing that the next phase of the engagement would test her skills in an entirely different way. The SEALs began their movement in standard tactical formation, with Morrison taking point while his remaining team members provided mutual support and carried their wounded. Rodriguez tracked their movement through her scope while simultaneously scanning for enemy fighters who might try to engage them during their vulnerable movement phase. At this range, she had to lead her targets significantly, calculating not just where they were, but where they would be when her bullet arrived. An enemy fighter armed with an RPG emerged from a cave entrance and began tracking Morrison's team with his launcher. Rodriguez immediately shifted her aim, calculating the lead necessary to hit a target that was moving while she was aiming at moving friendlies. The geometry was complex, requiring her to fire at a point in space where multiple moving objects would converge in exactly the right sequence. Her 7th shot caught the RPG gunner just as he was squeezing the trigger on his launcher. The .50 caliber round struck him in the chest while the RPG round fired harmlessly into the air, exploding against a cliff face hundreds of yards from its intended target. The simultaneous timing was so precise that it appeared choreographed, as if Rodriguez had somehow reached across 2 miles of distance to personally save Morrison's team from destruction. "Unstanding shot, Ghost." Morrison's voice carried genuine amazement. "You just saved our collective asses." Continuing movement to secondary LZ. The SEALs began their movement in standard tactical formation, with Morrison taking point while his remaining team members provided mutual support and carried their wounded. Rodriguez tracked their movement through her scope while simultaneously scanning for enemy fighters who might try to engage them during their vulnerable movement phase. At this range, she had to lead her targets significantly, calculating not just where they were, but where they would be when her bullet arrived.
Rodriguez's 8th through 12th shots came in rapid succession, each one targeting a specific threat to Morrison's moving team. She had entered what military psychologists called flow state, a condition where conscious thought gave way to pure instinct and training. Her rifle had become an extension of her will, each shot flowing naturally from target acquisition to trigger pull, without the normal hesitation that marked lesser marksmen. Shot number 8 eliminated a fighter with a scoped rifle who was tracking Morrison's point man. The bullet struck him in the head at a distance of 3,200 yards, setting a new personal record for Rodriguez while simultaneously saving an American life. The enemy sniper's rifle tumbled into the rocks below, its scope shattered and useless. The precision of the shot sent a clear message to any remaining enemy marksman. They were outclassed by an opponent operating on an entirely different level. Shot number 9 took out a machine gun crew that was attempting to set up an enfilading fire position along the SEAL's route of movement. Rodriguez's bullet struck the primary gunner while he was still positioning his weapon, the massive .50 caliber round passing through his torso and destroying the machine gun's receiver in a shower of twisted metal. The assistant gunner dove for cover, abandoning the weapon and fleeing toward the cave system with the panicked movements of a man who had seen death reach out from an impossible distance. "Ghost, you're shooting like you've got a crystal ball up there," Morrison radioed, his professional composure unable to completely mask his amazement. "Every time we identify a threat, you eliminate it before we can even call it out. How are you reading this battlefield so well?" Rodriguez chambered her 10th round while scanning for new targets. "Alpha Actual, I've been watching this valley for 2 days. I know every rock, every shadow, every possible firing position. These guys are good, but they're fighting on my terms now." Her voice was calm, matter-of-fact, betraying none of the intense concentration required to maintain such precision at impossible ranges. The truth was more complex than she let on. Rodriguez wasn't just shooting, she was conducting a symphony of destruction, orchestrating each shot to create maximum psychological impact while systematically dismantling the enemy's ability to coordinate their defense. Every eliminated target was chosen not just for immediate tactical value, but for its effect on overall enemy morale and combat effectiveness. Her 10th shot targeted what appeared to be a senior leader who was trying to organize a counterattack from a position near the cave entrances. The man was gesturing frantically with a radio in one hand and a rifle in the other, clearly attempting to rally his scattered forces. Rodriguez put her crosshairs on his chest and squeezed the trigger with the same mechanical precision she had used for the previous 9 shots. The impact was devastating, but more important was the effect on the surrounding fighters. The leader's elimination caused immediate confusion among the enemy force, with several groups of fighters appearing to lose coordination and purpose. Rodriguez could see them through her scope, looking around uncertainly, no longer sure of their orders or their tactical situation. Command and control was breaking down completely under the relentless pressure of precision fire. Morrison's team reached the halfway point in their movement to the secondary LZ, but Rodriguez could see new threats developing. A group of approximately 20 fighters was attempting to flank the SEALs from the east, moving through a ravine that would allow them to set up an ambush along the team's route of movement. The distance was over 3,400 yards, beyond the effective range of her weapon system, but Rodriguez had already proven that effective range was more of a suggestion than a hard limit. She made calculations for what would be her longest shot of the engagement. The wind had shifted to a quartering breeze, adding complexity to an already difficult firing solution. Temperature was rising as the sun climbed higher, affecting air density and bullet trajectory. Most challenging of all, her targets were moving through broken terrain, requiring her to predict not just where they would be when her bullet arrived, but which parts of their bodies would be exposed as they moved between cover. Rodriguez selected the lead fighter in the flanking group, a man who appeared to be directing the movement of the others. Eliminating him would disrupt their coordination, while sending a clear message that nowhere in the valley was safe from her reach. She adjusted her scope from maximum elevation, compensating for a bullet drop that would exceed 30 feet at this range. Her 11th shot was a testament to the marriage of skill and technology, human instinct and mechanical precision. The bullet traveled for over 7 seconds, during which time atmospheric conditions, Earth rotation, and target movement all had to be factored into the equation. When it finally arrived, it struck with the force of divine judgment, eliminating the target and sending its companions scrambling for cover among the rocks. The psychological effect was immediate and profound. Word was spreading through the enemy force that an American sniper was operating at impossible ranges, eliminating targets with supernatural accuracy. Rodriguez could see fighters abandoning their positions entirely.
By her 12th shot, Elena Rodriguez had achieved something that military historians would later describe as unprecedented in modern warfare. She had single-handedly broken up a coordinated ambush by a force 10 times the size of Morrison's team, using nothing but precision rifle fire from a range that pushed the very limits of physics. But her greatest challenge was yet to come. "Ghost, we've got a problem." Morrison's voice carried new urgency over the radio. "Spotters report a technical vehicle, pickup truck with a heavy machine gun, moving to intercept us at the LZ. It's too far for our weapons, and if it gets into position, we'll be sitting ducks when the extraction bird arrives." Rodriguez shifted her scope toward the secondary landing zone and immediately spotted the threat. A Toyota pickup truck with a D-Shook heavy machine gun mounted in the bed was racing across the valley floor, kicking up a dust cloud that made it visible from miles away. The vehicle was moving fast, probably 60 miles per hour across rough terrain, making it one of the most challenging shots in sniper history. The mathematics of engaging a moving target at extreme range were staggering. Rodriguez had to calculate not just the lead necessary to hit a vehicle moving at 60 miles per hour, but also account for the vehicle's changing elevation as it navigated the uneven terrain. The bullet flight time would be over 7 seconds, during which the truck would travel nearly 600 feet. She would essentially be shooting at empty air, trusting physics and instinct to bring her bullet and the target together at exactly the right moment. "Alpha Actual, I see the technical, moving to intercept your movement to LZ. This is going to be challenging," she radioed back. She chambered what would either be the most spectacular shot of her career or a complete miss that would leave Morrison's team exposed to devastating fire from the heavy machine gun. The truck was still over 3,600 yards away when Rodriguez began her calculations. At that distance, the curvature of the earth became a factor, requiring her to aim even higher to compensate for the bullet's parabolic trajectory. The vehicle was also moving at an angle relative to her position, which meant she had to calculate both the forward lead and the lateral displacement necessary to achieve a hit. Rodriguez tracked the vehicle through her scope, noting its speed and direction while simultaneously calculating the intercept point. The truck was following a rough track across the valley floor, but the driver was making small course corrections to avoid obstacles in rough terrain. Each course change altered the firing solution, requiring Rodriguez to continuously update her calculations in real time. The shot would require her to fire at a point approximately 400 yards ahead of where the truck currently was, aiming at what appeared to be completely empty desert. The bullet would arc high into the sky before descending to meet its target at exactly the right moment. "Ghost, that vehicle is getting close to the LZ," Morrison radioed with increasing urgency. "We need to know if you can stop it, because if you can't, we need to abort the extraction and find another way out." The weight of 8 American lives pressed down on Rodriguez's shoulders as she made her final adjustments to the scope. She could see the truck's gunner preparing his weapon, chambering a round into the heavy machine gun while bracing himself against the vehicle's roll bar. Once that weapon was in position at the landing zone, it would command the entire area with devastating firepower. No helicopter could survive landing under those conditions, and Morrison's team would be trapped with wounded men and dwindling ammunition. Rodriguez took a deep breath and began her trigger squeeze. The shot felt different from all the others. There was a sense of finality to it, as if this single bullet would determine the outcome not just of the engagement, but of 8 American lives. Time seemed to slow as her finger applied pressure to the trigger, the rifle's mechanism responding with mechanical precision to her will. The Barrett M82A1 roared for the 12th time that morning, sending another 750-grain projectile arcing across the impossible distance toward a moving target that represented the difference between rescue and disaster. Rodriguez maintained her sight picture through the recoil, tracking the truck's movement while her bullet traveled its 7-second journey through the thin mountain air. Through her scope, she watched the truck continue its race toward the landing zone, the driver and gunner completely unaware that death was approaching them at 3 times the speed of sound. The bullet's trajectory would take it on a high arc, reaching an apex of nearly 200 feet above the desert floor before descending toward its target with devastating kinetic energy. The impact when it came was spectacular. Rodriguez's bullet struck the engine block, the massive .50 caliber round punching through steel and aluminum before detonating the fuel tank in a fireball that could be seen from miles. The vehicle cartwheeled through the air, its wreckage scattered across hundreds of yards of desert floor, while a column of black smoke marked the death of the final threat to Morrison's extraction.
The destruction of the technical vehicle marked a turning point that even Rodriguez hadn't anticipated. The massive explosion, visible across the entire battlefield, seemed to break the last vestiges of enemy resistance. Through her scope, she could see fighters streaming away from their positions, abandoning equipment and fleeing toward the deeper mountain passages. What had started as a coordinated ambush by a professional military force was now a complete rout. "Ghost, that was absolutely incredible!" Morrison's voice carried a mixture of professional admiration and personal relief. "The entire enemy force is pulling back. I count at least 100 fighters abandoning their positions and moving toward the high ground. You've single-handedly broken a force 10 times our size." Rodriguez continued scanning through her scope, looking for any remaining threats that might endanger the extraction. The immediate battlefield was clear, but her training had taught her never to assume that an enemy was completely defeated until the mission was complete. Small groups of fighters could still pose a threat to the incoming helicopter, and a single well-placed shot could turn victory into disaster. "Alpha Actual, I'm seeing scattered movement in the northern cave complex," Rodriguez reported, tracking several figures moving through the rocky terrain. "Looks like some diehards are trying to reposition for a final shot at the extraction bird. I'm gonna clean house before your ride arrives." Her 13th shot targeted a fighter who was attempting to set up a shoulder-fired surface-to-air missile from a concealed position overlooking the landing zone.
The distance was nearly 3,000 yards, but after 12 successful engagements, Rodriguez had developed an almost supernatural feel for the ballistics at extreme range. The bullet caught the missile operator just as he was shouldering his weapon, eliminating both the threat and the expensive piece of Russian-made hardware. Shot 14 took out a sniper who had been crawling toward a position that would have given him a clear line of sight on the landing zone. Rodriguez had spotted the telltale glint of his scope lens reflecting the morning sun, a mistake that cost him his life. The .50 caliber round struck with such force that it actually knocked his body off the rocky ledge, sending him tumbling into the ravine below. Viper Base, this is Alpha Actual. LZ is secure. I repeat, LZ is secure. We have one friendly sniper providing overwatch, who has eliminated all threats in the area. Inbound aircraft should be advised that we have active friendly fire coming from the eastern ridgeline at maximum range. Rodriguez smiled at Morrison's professional understatement. Active friendly fire hardly described what she had accomplished over the past 30 minutes. She had broken the back of an entire enemy force using nothing but skill, determination, and a rifle that most people considered too heavy for precision work. The Barrett M82A1 had been designed as an anti-material weapon, intended to destroy vehicles and equipment rather than engage individual targets. In Rodriguez's hands, it had become the most effective force multiplier in modern military history. Her 15th shot eliminated the last visible threat, a fighter with an RPG who was trying to position himself for a shot at the incoming helicopter. The round struck him center mass at a range of 2,800 yards, sending the rocket-propelled grenade tumbling harmlessly down the mountainside. With that shot, Rodriguez had cleared every enemy position that could threaten the extraction. The sound of rotor blades echoed across the valley as two UH-60 Blackhawks approached the landing zone in formation. The lead aircraft carried the extraction team and medical personnel, while the second bird provided armed escort with door gunners and rocket pods. The pilots had been briefed on the situation and knew they were flying into what had been a hot LZ just minutes earlier. "Ghost, this is Rescue 1, the lead pilot radioed on the emergency frequency. "We're 2 minutes out from the LZ. What's the tactical situation?" His voice was calm and professional, but Rodriguez could hear the underlying tension of a pilot flying into a combat zone. "Rescue 1, this is Ghost. LZ is clear of all threats. I have Overwatch established and will maintain security during your approach and extraction. Be advised, there are scattered enemy forces in the northern mountains, but they are in full retreat and pose no immediate threat to your aircraft." Rodriguez watched through her scope as the helicopters swept low across the valley floor, their pilots using terrain masking to avoid any potential ground fire. The lead Blackhawk flared for landing, while the escort bird established a circular pattern overhead, its door gunners scanning for threats with M240 machine guns. Morrison's team moved quickly to the helicopter, carrying their wounded with the practiced efficiency of elite warriors who had faced impossible odds and survived thanks to precision fire from an unimaginable distance. The helicopters disappeared over the southern ridge, carrying Morrison's team back to safety. Rodriguez remained in position for another hour, watching for any signs of enemy activity and ensuring that no pursuit was organized. The battlefield below was eerily quiet, littered with abandoned equipment and the smoke from burning vehicles. When she finally received the order to withdraw, Rodriguez had fired 15 rounds and achieved 15 kills at ranges that redefined what was possible in precision shooting. She had single-handedly defeated a force of over 200 enemy fighters, saved 8 American lives, and created a legend that would be discussed in military academies for generations to come.
Elena Rodriguez remained in her Overwatch position for 3 more hours after the successful extraction, ensuring no enemy force could reorganize and threaten the withdrawal route. Through her scope, she watched the battlefield transform from an active combat zone into a scene of desolation and abandonment. Scattered equipment, abandoned positions, and the occasional wisp of smoke marked where one of the most legendary sniper engagements in military history had taken place. The radio crackled with traffic from various command elements as word of the engagement spread through military channels. "Ghost, this is Viper Base," came the voice of her commanding officer, Colonel Sarah Mitchell. "We're getting preliminary reports that are frankly hard to believe. Can you confirm that you engaged multiple targets at ranges exceeding 3,500 yards with 15 consecutive hits?" Rodriguez keyed her microphone, choosing her words carefully. "Viper Base, this is Ghost. I engaged 15 targets at various ranges between 2,800 and 3,600 yards. All targets were eliminated with single shots. Alpha Team extraction was successful with no additional casualties." She paused, knowing that her next words would be recorded and analyzed by military historians for decades to come. The Barrett M82A1 performed flawlessly under extreme conditions, and environmental factors were within acceptable parameters for precision engagement. The technical language couldn't disguise the magnitude of what had occurred. Rodriguez had achieved something that ballistics experts had said was impossible: sustained, accurate fire at ranges that pushed beyond the theoretical limits of her weapon system. Each shot had required calculations that most snipers would consider too complex to attempt under combat conditions, yet she had made them instinctively while under the pressure of saving American lives. Colonel Mitchell's voice carried a note of awe despite her professional demeanor. "Ghost, preliminary satellite imagery confirms destruction of multiple enemy positions and vehicles consistent with .50 caliber impacts. Intel estimates enemy casualties at approximately 50 killed in action, with the remainder of the force scattered and combat ineffective." She paused before continuing. "I've been in the Marine Corps for 23 years, and I've never seen anything like this." Rodriguez began the careful process of withdrawing from her position, policing her brass and ensuring she left no trace of her presence. The 15 empty .50 caliber cases represented more than just expended ammunition. They were physical proof of an engagement that would be studied and discussed for generations. Each case bore the marks of extreme pressure and heat, evidence of the tremendous forces involved in precision shooting at maximum range. As she prepared to move to her extraction point, Rodriguez took one final look through her scope at the valley below. The enemy compound that had housed over 200 fighters was now silent and abandoned, its carefully prepared defensive positions rendered useless by precision fire from an impossible distance. The psychological impact of her engagement would extend far beyond the immediate tactical situation. Word would spread through enemy networks about the American sniper who could reach out and kill from ranges that seemed supernatural. The extraction helicopter arrived at Rodriguez's position exactly on schedule, a testament to the precision and professionalism of American military operations. As she climbed aboard the aircraft, the crew chief handed her a message from General James Harrison, commanding general of all Special Operations Forces in the region. The message was brief but significant. Exceptional performance under extreme conditions. Recommend immediate review for Medal of Honor consideration. During the flight back to base, Rodriguez reflected on the engagement and its implications. She had proven that individual skill and training could overcome seemingly impossible odds. But more importantly, she had demonstrated the lethal effectiveness of American military precision. The engagement would become a case study in military academies, but it would also serve as a warning to potential enemies about the reach and accuracy of American military power. The aircraft carrying Rodriguez landed at Forward Operating Base Chapman just as the sun was setting over the Afghan mountains. Word of her achievement had already spread through the base, and she was greeted by her commanding officer and a crowd of fellow Marines who had heard fragments of the story through radio traffic and intelligence reports. Colonel Mitchell approached Rodriguez as she stepped off the helicopter, her expression mixing professional respect with personal amazement. "Rodriguez, I've just finished debriefing Morrison's team. They're calling you the Angel of Death, and frankly, after hearing their account, I understand why. 15 shots, 15 kills, at ranges that shouldn't be possible. How do you explain it? Rodriguez shouldered her rifle and looked back toward the mountains where she had spent the last 72 hours. Colonel, I just did my job. Americans were in trouble, and I had the training and equipment to help them. The rest was just mathematics and trigger control. Her matter-of-fact response belied the extraordinary nature of what she had accomplished, but it perfectly captured the mindset of the American warrior, humble in victory, focused on mission accomplishment, and always ready to do whatever.
The story of Elena Rodriguez's legendary engagement spread through military circles like wildfire, but it would be months before the full implications became clear. The immediate tactical victory, saving Morrison's team and breaking up a major enemy stronghold, was significant enough. But the strategic impact of one sniper eliminating an entire enemy force from an impossible distance would reshape how America's enemies viewed the reach and precision of American military power. Within 48 hours of the engagement, intelligence intercepts revealed that enemy forces throughout the region were abandoning exposed positions and retreating to deeper mountain strongholds. The psychological impact of Rodriguez's precision shooting had created a force protection effect that extended far beyond the immediate battlefield. Enemy fighters were now operating under the assumption that nowhere was safe from American reach, fundamentally altering their tactical behavior and reducing their operational effectiveness. Morrison's team had fully recovered from their wounds within 2 weeks, but their debriefing sessions provided military analysts with unprecedented insight into the effects of extreme long-range precision fire on both enemy forces and friendly morale. "She saved our lives, plain and simple," Morrison told his debriefers. "But more than that, she gave us something we'd never experienced before, absolute confidence that someone was watching over us, someone who could reach out and touch any threat, no matter how far away." The technical analysis of Rodriguez's shooting was equally impressive. Ballistics experts from the Army's Aberdeen Proving Ground conducted extensive computer modeling to understand how she had achieved such accuracy at extreme range. Their conclusion was that Rodriguez had operated at the very edge of what was physically possible, requiring not just exceptional skill, but an almost intuitive understanding of environmental factors that most shooters never fully master. General Harrison's recommendation for the Medal of Honor moved quickly through military channels, supported by detailed analysis from multiple intelligence sources that confirmed the strategic impact of Rodriguez's engagement. The citation would eventually read, "For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of her life above and beyond the call of duty while serving as a sniper in support of combat operations against enemy forces." But Rodriguez herself remained focused on the future rather than past achievements. She had proven that American military precision could overcome seemingly impossible odds, but she also understood that enemies would adapt to this new reality. Her engagement had raised the bar for what was expected from precision shooters, creating both opportunities and challenges for future operations. The Barrett M82A1 rifle that Rodriguez had used in the engagement was retired to the Quantico Museum, where it would be displayed alongside a detailed account of the 15 shots that had redefined precision shooting. Each shot was documented with range, environmental conditions, and target description, creating a permanent record of an engagement that military historians would study for generations. Rodriguez was promoted to gunnery sergeant and assigned to the Marine Corps' Advanced Marksmanship School, where she would train the next generation of precision shooters. Her techniques and insights would be incorporated into the curriculum, ensuring that future Marines would benefit from the lessons learned during her legendary engagement in the Afghan mountains.
The enemy compound that had housed over 200 fighters remained abandoned for months after the engagement, its strategic value eliminated by the psychological impact of Rodriguez's precision shooting. When American forces finally occupied the position, they found detailed intelligence documents that revealed the extent to which enemy forces had been demoralized by the engagement. One captured document, translated by military intelligence, provided insight into the enemy perspective. The American sniper strikes from distances that seem impossible, with accuracy that appears supernatural. Our fighters refuse to occupy exposed positions, fearing death from an invisible enemy who can reach across mountains to deliver precision death. 5 years later, when Rodriguez had completed her military service and transitioned to civilian life, she received a letter from Morrison, who had gone on to command his own SEAL team. "Ghost, I wanted you to know that every successful mission my team completes, every American we bring home safely, builds on what you taught us that day in Afghanistan. You showed us that no distance is too far, no shot is too difficult when American lives are on the line." The legend of Elena "Ghost" Rodriguez would inspire a generation of American military personnel, proving that individual excellence, combined with superior training and equipment, could overcome any enemy advantage. Her 15 shots from an impossible distance had saved 8 American lives and created a legend that would endure long after the last echoes of gunfire had faded from the Afghan mountains. In the end, Rodriguez's greatest achievement wasn't the record-breaking shots or the tactical victory. It was the demonstration that American warriors, properly trained and equipped, could accomplish the impossible when their fellow Americans were in danger. That lesson would resonate through military academies, training schools, and combat units for generations to come.
The classified report on Rodriguez's engagement reached the Pentagon 3 days after the successful extraction. Its contents so extraordinary that it required verification from multiple independent sources before senior leadership would accept its authenticity. The document, stamped "Top Secret, Eyes Only," contained detailed ballistics analysis, satellite imagery, and testimony from 17 witnesses that collectively painted a picture of military achievement that bordered on the impossible. Secretary of Defense Robert Matthews read the report twice before calling for an immediate briefing with the Joint Chiefs of Staff. "Gentlemen," he began, spreading satellite photographs across the conference table, "we need to discuss how one Marine sergeant with a rifle managed to accomplish what typically requires an entire battalion." The images showed the aftermath of Rodriguez's engagement: scattered enemy equipment, abandoned positions, and the smoking wreckage of vehicles destroyed by precision fire from over 2 miles away. General Patricia Williams, the Marine Corps Commandant, had flown directly from Quantico to brief the Secretary personally. "Sir, we've had our best instructors from the Scout Sniper School analyze Rodriguez's performance. Their conclusion is that she operated beyond the theoretical limits of her equipment and training. Each shot required calculations that our advanced students struggled to perform with computer assistance, yet she made them instinctively under combat conditions." Within 72 hours of the Pentagon briefing, Rodriguez received orders transferring her to a classified program designated Project Longshot. The program, jointly administered by DARPA and Marine Corps Systems Command, was tasked with analyzing her techniques and developing training methodologies that could produce similar capabilities in other precision shooters. The first phase of Project Longshot involved extensive medical and psychological evaluation at Walter Reed Army Medical Center. Dr. Sarah Chen, a neurologist specializing in performance pathology, conducted comprehensive testing to understand how Rodriguez processed visual information and made complex calculations under stress. The testing revealed that Rodriguez possessed several physiological advantages: visual acuity, measuring 20/10 in both eyes, a resting heart rate of 48 beats per minute, and hand-eye coordination scoring in the 99th percentile. Dr. Michael Foster, a combat psychologist, discovered that Rodriguez experienced what he termed temporal compression during high-stress situations.
When engaging targets at extreme range, Rodriguez reports that time seems to slow down, allowing her to make complex calculations that would normally require several minutes of deliberate thought, he explained in his classified report. The ballistics analysis conducted at Aberdeen Proving Ground revealed the technical challenges Rodriguez had overcome during her legendary engagement. Dr. James Morrison, the Army's leading expert in external ballistics, summarized the findings. Rodriguez consistently demonstrated the ability to calculate and compensate for bullet drop exceeding 30 feet, wind drift of up to 2 feet, and even the Coriolis effect caused by Earth's rotation. These calculations, performed instinctively under combat stress, represent a level of ballistic intuition that we've never documented before. 6 months into Project Longshot, Rodriguez began working with a carefully selected group of Marine Corps Scout snipers who had been identified as having the potential for extreme long-range shooting. The training program she developed combined traditional marksmanship instruction with advanced environmental awareness techniques and psychological conditioning methods. The shot begins long before you touch the trigger. You have to become part of the environment, understanding wind patterns, temperature variations, even the way light reflects off different surfaces at various times of day, Rodriguez explained to her students. The first graduates of Rodriguez's advanced training program deployed to Afghanistan 9 months after her legendary engagement. Staff Sergeant Marcus Thompson, one of Rodriguez's star pupils, achieved the program's first validation when he successfully engaged targets at ranges exceeding 2,800 yards during a mission to rescue a downed pilot. "Ghost's training saved my life and the life of that pilot," Thompson reported. The success of the advanced training program led to its expansion across all branches of the military. Army Rangers, Navy SEALs, and Air Force Special Operations personnel began incorporating Rodriguez's techniques into their own training curricula. The program's influence extended beyond snipers, as the environmental awareness and stress management techniques proved valuable for all precision shooters. Enemy forces in Afghanistan and in other theaters began adapting their tactics in response to the demonstrated reach of American precision shooters. Intelligence reports indicated that opposing forces were establishing minimum standoff distances of over 4,000 yards from American positions, effectively creating exclusion zones around any location where American snipers might be operating. The psychological impact of Rodriguez's legendary shots was fundamentally altering how enemies approached engagement with American forces. International attention on American precision shooting capabilities increased dramatically following leaked reports about Rodriguez's engagement. Foreign military attachés sought information about American sniper training, while allied nations requested access to the advanced marksmanship techniques that had produced such extraordinary results. The State Department found itself using sniper training as a diplomatic tool, offering advanced instruction to key allies while carefully guarding the most sensitive aspects of Rodriguez's methodologies. The academic community also took notice of Rodriguez's achievement. The Department of Defense established partnerships with several universities to study the physics and human performance factors involved in extreme long-range shooting. MIT's ballistics laboratory began developing computer models to better understand bullet behavior at maximum range, while Johns Hopkins Applied Psychology Department studied the cognitive processes that enabled exceptional performance under extreme stress. Defense contractors invested millions of dollars in research and development projects aimed at creating weapon systems that could match or exceed the performance Rodriguez had achieved with modified conventional equipment. Advanced optical systems, smart ammunition, and computer-assisted targeting systems all benefited from research programs inspired by her legendary engagement. 3 years after her famous shots in the Afghan mountains, Rodriguez was selected to establish the military's first Center of Excellence for Extreme Long-Range Precision Shooting at Quantico. The facility would serve as both a training center and research laboratory. "Our goal," Rodriguez explained at the dedication ceremony, "is to ensure that every American warrior who needs to make the impossible shot has the training and equipment to succeed." By the 5th anniversary of her legendary engagement, Rodriguez's influence on American military capabilities was undeniable.
Precision shooting standards had been elevated across all services, with minimum qualification distances extended and accuracy requirements increased. More importantly, a new generation of American snipers were operating with the confidence that no target was beyond reach if they possessed the skill, determination, and equipment to reach out and touch the enemy with surgical precision.
Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.